Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us here at 1455 for the release party for issue 10 on the theme of power of 1455's Movable Type. This is our third live event. I've already grown accustomed to them and I'm enjoying them a lot. I hope you have been, or if this is your first time, extra hearty welcome. Thanks for checking out our programming. Very briefly, I'm Sean Murphy. I'm the executive director of 1455. We are a nonprofit arts organization, and our mission is actually extremely simple. We want to celebrate storytelling, and we do that in a variety of ways, but all of our programming is free and inclusive and open to the public. Some of the things we do, we have a monthly author series. Letting someone in. We have a monthly author series. We, of course, have our annual summer festival, which I'm delighted to announce. We have opened up officially for proposals and submissions. So we're looking forward to our fourth annual Summerfest, July 14th and 16th. And of course, not least, Movable Type, which is our bi-monthly digital magazine. And talking about storytelling, we genuinely try to look outside, although the written word is part and parcel to just about everything we do and discuss. We are increasingly creating space for storytelling across myriad genres. So Movable Type has begun to include, as you'll see tonight, in addition to fiction and poetry and memoir and essay, we are also including visual art, photography, and music, which is amazing. We've done that in our festivals, but now we're doing it in each issue of Movable Type. So Movable Type has really become kind of this multimedia forum. If you like what you're seeing, spread the word and encourage your creative friends to get involved, because we love nothing more than giving a worthy space to worthy creatives. So I want to say a few brief words about this theme, this issue's theme, which is power. I mentioned this in my director's note at the beginning of the issue, which is we actually do pick out the themes many months in advance. So the themes for all of 2022 were picked out in 2021, but I think it's safe to say we are attempting to pick themes that would resonate at any time, but it did seem almost uncannily resonant to think about power with what's going on in the world and what's occupied our time. So I'm extra grateful for the submissions we got and the very sensitive and provocative ways that we really looked at and interrogated not only what power is and what it means and who it means different things to, but what art says about power and how art speaks to power and helps us understand the motivation behind power and what power means both with and without words. I, of course, want to say very little about that. I want the people here tonight to showcase their work accordingly, but that also gives me an opportunity to mention that because of inevitable scheduling conflicts, we try to find times that work for as many people as possible, but it happens that there are more than a handful of contributors to this issue who couldn't join us tonight. And I look at that as a bittersweet. I want the more the merrier, but that gives me the chance to remind everyone that this issue, just like all previous 9 issues, are available at 1455litarts.org. We've made it so easy that you can absorb the issue all at once, but you can also click through, which I encourage you to do, and look at each individual piece one at a time, and you'll get the real flow of words and images and sounds. So please do check that out. And the people that couldn't be here tonight have my gratitude and real appreciation for their work. I'd also very quickly like to give a sincere shout out to our creative designer, who is also not here tonight, although I bet she's watching. Morgan Ryan is 1455's creative director, but that barely scratches the surface of what she really does. She is my partner in crime. She not only has created the beautiful cover art for this issue, but the aesthetic and the layout, the execution of everything from cover to credits is all her. So it's a joy to work with her, but it's a real privilege to have her amazing talent brought to bear. So this continues to be a real labor of love for me. And tonight, it's a real labor of love, because I think I've said in previous iterations of this event, my real job is just to get a bunch of really cool, smart, sensitive, creative people in a room and get out of the way and let them shine, which is really what we're about to do now. So I'll say that while all of our writers could not be here tonight, we do have two featured authors in this issue that are not here. So I just want to give a second shout out to Sarah Godarzi, whose novel The Almond and the Apricot is now available. You can read an excerpt in this issue and buy it at your independent bookstores. And likewise, Danielle Badra can't be here, but her collection, Like We Still Speak, is now available. And she'll be joining us on April 14th as our featured author for our monthly author series. So without further ado, we're just going to start from the top and go through by order of contributors. I am going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, so I don't have to read bios, because I think that gets a little dry. I'd like to let the authors and artists speak for themselves. But starting at the top of the alphabet and at big top of my heart is my dear friend Justin Aaron. He is on 1455's board. He is one of my best friends. He's an absolute inspiration. And it's just a tremendous honor to work with him and to showcase his work, which you're about to hear about in this issue of Movable Type. So Justin, I would be delighted if you would kick off the proceedings, and I will happily step out of the way.
Thank you, Sean. And thank you all for the company tonight in the community. I look forward to hearing all of you read and present your work as well. And hi, Stephanie, down in the bottom of my screen. I have not seen you in so long. It's great to see you. Well, Sean, thank you first for inviting me to show this work and giving me a forum for this series, which is on Saltworks. It's a current series that I've been working on. A little bit about me. I live on Martha's Vineyard. I'm a poet and a photographer. Kind of moved into the visual field in the last 5 or so years. And this work of Saltworks, I also teach something called Devotion to Writing, which is really just how do we have a devoted writing practice? How do we cultivate a writing practice and sustain ourselves as writers, as creators, really? But I do it through the realm of writing. Yeah, so this work really grew out of when COVID hit and we were all in lockdown. And I was walking around my property and taking photographs first of tree stumps. And I thought, wow, they look like they could be universes, not just, the tree stumps. And then I was going to take a trip to Texas. I had a trip planned to West Texas, which got canceled because of COVID. So I thought, well, I'll do some research in the meantime and see where I would like to go and photograph. I was really interested at that moment in doing the fracking industry. So I got on Google Maps and I flew over West Texas from my house on Martha's Vineyard. And I started to see these amazing, powerful designs in the landscape of fields and, fields that were plowed by tractors, or irrigation designs from irrigation, big crop circles. And I thought, this is amazing. And I started to use satellite technology to photograph, to make images of this work. And that was right when the lockdown started, 2020, March and April 2020. And so the Saltwork series comes out of this. And the reason I think it's appropriate to Movable Type, talk about power. So for two reasons. The first being salt. Saltworks, salt itself was power for much of human history. If you controlled the salt trade, if you controlled the salt mines, you were powerful. You had money. Everybody needed salt. And if you didn't have it, then of course you would sell it, to the people that didn't. And so salt was one of the earliest forms of power. If you look at all of the empires early on, they had control of the salt. The Habsburg Empire in Europe, for example, had several salt mines which they controlled. The Venetians, Venice controlled salt production. So this was really just kind of one way. It wasn't really, I didn't get into it to take photos of power. I just found these salt works, and I'm going to share my screen, and you can see some of these. I'll go through a couple. I might have to unshare and come back on, but I think you can see this one.
Yep.
This is a saltwork plant in Texas, actually. And so everybody okay? So
it was a dramatic.
So the other thing about power in this, for me, and storytelling as it relates to movable type in 1455 is, there's a story of the land here. There's a story of the earth, of geography, geology. And then there is the story of humanity, of humans working it. And in this photo, you can see kind of in the center, that's a little salt production area. But you can also see these little trails going off. And there's also cattle grazing there. So you can actually see small, if you can see the arrow, these are cattle all here. And these are these cattle trails that make these kind of arrays. And so, to me, the geology and the geometries make this kind of powerful thing with the earth. And it's also made by human interaction. And I find that really intriguing in these images. I often have, in the saltworks, of course, there are lots of, well, in the ones from Texas as well, all the images have a human element. There is some story that's being played out between the earth and human beings and our work. But I feel like the great power is what earth does. The greater power is the earth. And of course, I think some of these images speak to climate change, although these might not explicitly talk about that. You can just see so much manipulation going on. And then, and my feeling is the earth makes something beautiful regardless of what kind of destruction we do. So let me stop this one and go to one more, a couple more. Sean, will you keep time for me, just in case? I don't want to go over.
You're fine.
Okay. So this one is saltworks in Peru. And here you can really, I think, see the salt. This is one of the largest salt fields in the world. And those are salt pools. These kind of jewel-like blue turquoise colors are all these pools, shallow pools where the salt is kept and pumped with water. And then the sunlight, in a lot of these salt works, the sunlight evaporates the water and leaves this kind of desalts, these distilled salt crystals. But I love, another part of this project that I think is really intriguing is this, at first look, you just don't know what it is. It's flat, it's not a three-dimensional image. You don't really see any of the contours of the land. And you think, well, maybe that could be a bracelet or, a watch band. When I post these on social media, I love how people respond, and they say what they think it might be. And so I think it's open to interpretation. And I think that's one of the things about the images that I love is it requires that people kind of really stop and digest what they're looking at, slows us down a little. For me, I love that because I'm always scrolling through my news feeds and rapidly. And when I see something that I really have to take a break with and kind of contemplate, I enjoy that. And I think these images do. I'll stop that one and just do some that are a little more. So this one was actually shot. This is not with a satellite. This is done with a drone. And this is a salt works, one of the oldest salt works in the world. It is in the south of France, where I was. And this is one of the more recent ones from the series. You can see down, this is a big salt field here where it's evaporation. These are smaller evaporation ponds. And this is, I don't know what goes on here. Maybe they're redoing it, but these are all just, truck or tractor or, bulldozer marks, all these kind of arrays coming out. But you just, you can see all of the colors and textures and things. And I find these really powerful. They're really powerful images, the colors, and especially the geometries. So this one, as I said, I shot with a drone, and then I import these things into Lightroom where I can manipulate a little. I've designed certain, what I call developmental presets, and it just kind of, I can create different feels by overlaying these kind of filters on the photographs. And then I'll just give you one more, which is maybe the most abstract, but this is the first series that I shot. The very first images to come from the saltworks. This is a saltworks bed. This is a saltworks production place. It's in Pakistan. And I don't know, this is, when I saw these, I knew I was going to be in for this series for the long haul. And so I've been, if you can't tell, I've been using Google and then, my own travels to go all over, find salt production places all over the world, and, figure out how to compose photographs, images that, the cropping, all how you frame it. Sometimes it takes a while to see what's going on. I have to stay with these images for a while and decide, do I flip them? How do I compose this? But I love this one, maybe the negative side of power, but there's something to me that's kind of violent in this image. And I think it's this dark kind of explosion here. And what this actually is a break in the retaining wall of the salt, this big salt bed. And it has allowed this kind of dark soil embankment here to leach in to the salt field. But it looks to me like an explosion or a fire, or even like somebody struck a match and had it burn on a page or something. And so again, you don't have a lot of 3D. You don't really have anything to tell you what this is. It's very abstract. It could be a painting. And to me, all of that is evocative, and I don't care that people don't exactly know what they are, but I what I'm trying to do in the compositions and the textures and the colors is kind of give something, tell a story, one of the earth in a way. And then again, for this issue specifically, I thought these images related to power, and they're powerful in their, I think, compositions, but then they also, with that kind of explosion thing in here, there are elements that also speak to, the different uses of power, maybe in a violent way. I don't know. So I thought these images would be appropriate to this issue, and that's that.
Incredibly appropriate, incredibly provocative, and so appreciated. I could talk about Justin and my admiration for him for quite a while, but what I want to say tonight is Justin to me is kind of the complete artist, in that his sensibility invokes, the earliest. He's like a bard that can tell tales around a campfire, and to see him branch into utilizing technology and incorporating that into this very soulful art has expanded my own kind of vision of what storytelling can mean, and the power of how that sparks imagination and brings our world kind of from different angles into view. So Justin, it's a tremendous honor to associate with you and have your work in this issue. So I thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Sean. And just one thing I would say is I thank you, because until you invited me to do this, to present this, I hadn't had any language really for these images and how it related to things. And by even just kind of, it seems haphazard, this theme of power, but it particularly applied to this, and it really made me think and explore salt and what am I doing here? And so you've helped me kind of come up with a language for what I'm doing. So much appreciated.
That's truly a pleasure. So thank you. Another a writer, scholar who can't be with us tonight, supplied by my request, because I had seen an earlier iteration of a meditation on Ukraine that he wrote shortly after the hostilities broke out. But I want to give a quick recognition to my friend Matthew Davis, who directs the Alan Chew Center of International Writing at George Mason University. We have and will continue to partner with the Chew Center and George Mason. And I thank Matt for allowing me to use his beautiful, succinct meditation on power vis-a-vis current events And again, like with all of these pieces, I encourage anyone to go check it out and experience it. So now for some poetry. One of the great joys of publishing a magazine and running a nonprofit dedicated towards storytelling is there's people that I meet, there's people whose work of course I discover, but when I have the opportunity to discover work from someone I already know, there's something extra special about that. So I'll introduce Steve Petler by saying that in addition to being one of the smartest people I know, he's also one of the deepest thinkers, and his work reflects that. And he is somehow able to distill this multifaceted, he knows a little bit, actually, he knows more than a little bit about seemingly everything. And he's able to channel this experience and passion and knowledge into very condensed, almost like making a diamond out of coal. And the poem in this cycle that he's been working on are these very compressed meditations. And it was a joy to nudge him a little bit and have him submit. And it's a tremendous joy for me to showcase his work. And I've been looking forward to hearing him read from his series, The Mirrored Sphere. So Steve, if you would be so kind, please share some poetry with us.
Well, thank you, Sean, and it's thank you very much for moving me in this direction. This is the first I've ever had anything published formally, although I was in the creative writing program at UVA in college, and I appreciate you inviting me, and I appreciate 1455 and Movable Type for publishing it. I want to say a little bit about me real quick, and then about the cycle of poems. I am a lawyer, and I do primarily business stuff, but to me, that's always been means to an end. It's a job. My real passion has always been writing. I worked on a novel for years when I was younger. In fact, I quit practicing law for a while to do that. And to get back into it in the last, I'd say 5 years, I've been working on this cycle, and finally finished it over COVID with all the forced time I had. So I got the chance to do that. So what I'd been working on and where this came from, I've been very focused on understanding how human beings create their own reality, and I believe that is a large part of the human experience is this meaning that we seem to summon out of some nether region and impose upon things, and it creates a reality, and it formulates how we think about things. And the conceit that I developed to put this in is the idea of the mirrored sphere, that we're kind of this light shining in this mirrored sphere, and everything we see is just reflecting back the things that we're putting out there. And that different meditations on that worked in the different iterations of these different poems. And I finished the chapbook, I think this summer. I probably finalized it. But there's 27 poems in the cycle. And these are 3 of them that I thought would kind of get to the heart of the things the quickest. So I'd like to share these if I may. I'm a little nervous, even though I speak in court all the time. I've read poetry in public before, but it makes me a little nervous every time. Okay. Within the mirrored sphere, real change, reality, all which can be encompassed, relation of center to circumference, ratio the same, through all spheres of existence, endless change expressed in the infinity of pi, limit impressed upon the imaginary, creates, effects deviation, extends reality, energy emanates from a central being, directed, projected, reflected, inscrutable, without relation, limitation, else dissipation, ejaculation, into the void of all potential. No witness, no other, alone, conscious energy ignited, shining center of the abyss, here within the mirrored sphere. So you can see they start and end the same too, which is also a little bit of the conceit of capturing it within the mirrored sphere. The next one. Within the mirrored sphere, endlessly echoing silent words from no mouth spoken, from one to another, one yet another, one who speaks, one who knows what's spoken, related as center to circumference, limit of understanding to understanding, soundless syllables, echoing endlessly, substantiating all space within the mirrored sphere. And the last one's a little lighter in some sense. Within the mirrored sphere, what moves from and to in dialectic? Paints with feathery strokes, dawn clouds above the sea, tints light diffuse, ripples water, sways sea oats on the piled dune, lifts, dips, a passing swallow. What moves from and to in dialectic within the mirrored sphere? And there you have it.
Well done, sir. Thank you very much. And as always, it's a treat to have read work and then hear it in the author's words. I don't think anything can really approximate the magic of that. And I'll add that I think you win coolest backdrop award there with your natural backdrop. So thanks for being here, Steve. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry. It's really a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay, so another individual that could not be here tonight it happens to be someone I actually have known also for decades, and he's a musician that I admire, and he has always been a tremendous advocate for his late wife, who was a very talented writer and poet. She wrote fiction as well, but she was a talented poet, and he had asked me a while back if I would consider some of her work, and I told him it would be an absolute honor. And that's always a tricky proposition, because when someone asks you something like that, you certainly hope that the work is good. And I want to say that the work is phenomenal. And, on a somber note, Paula did pass away, so I wish she was here to read these poems, but I certainly am glad that she was here while she was, to share her soul with us. And Daryl, being a musician, a very capable, talented musician, he founded the JCA Orchestra, and he included a musical piece in this issue. The video can be savored, and I hope that that's a gateway to appreciating more of his music. He's a prolific composer and just a very brilliant contemporary thinker and strategist as it relates to music. So I wish Daryl was here to talk and play, but we can enjoy his work online, and I encourage you to check him out. So we will shift from poetry to fiction. Tremendous pleasure to see Thomas Rayfield's work, and I don't really know what to say about it, because the best work speaks for itself. So I want to say little and allow him to introduce himself and read this devastating piece. But Thomas, I'm really glad you're able to join us tonight.
Thank you so much, Sean. And I don't mean to disappoint you, but I'm not going to read the piece. I thought I would talk a little bit about exactly why I'm not going to read the piece.
Perfect. Well, the piece is that's a win-win, right? Because the piece is published, right. So this will be a good opportunity for people to hear you and then go read it. So
it's a lead-in. I am a novelist, and I live in Brooklyn, New York, and this is my first appearance in Movable Type. I'm very honored to be here with everyone. For me, one of the great appeals of novel writing is how you can disappear into the characters of the work. I know a lot of people use their life and their voice as a basis for their stories, and that's great. There's many different ways to write a story, as there are people writing stories, but I take the opposite approach. I try to empty my head of any vestige of thought, of my own personal history, of what I'd like to see happen or what I dread may happen. I feel there's too much of me in my everyday life. So I want to wriggle free of that in my work. And what I've found is if you keep your consciousness clear of any inner voice, of any whim or desire, which is really hard to do, then other voices begin to filter in.
Mhm.
I mean, they're out there, an almost infinite number of individuals all around us. And I find if I keep my skull a pristine chamber, then the voices resonate there. How they resonate, the sound they make, the words they form, the acoustics of my brain, that to me is autobiography, true autobiography, which is something you don't know about yourself until you write it down. So the story that Sean has very kindly agreed to publish is about a young man who, as a child, was abused and damaged by his next door neighbor. He goes to visit the man now who's in a nursing home, not knowing what he's going to do, how he's going to handle this encounter. But I don't want to read the story itself. I want you to get to know him on your own. I feel that I've done my part by making this object out of words. Now, hopefully it has spun free. It has a life of its own. If I've done my job well, maybe it will stick around for a while. Maybe it will reach some kind of escape velocity and orbit the Earth. But that's between you and the work. I'm out. That's another great thing about writing, stepping away from it, realizing you're done, that you're free. It's a very buoyant feeling, which may explain why I'm so happy here to be along with all these other terrific contributors whose work I've enjoyed reading over the past week. So all I can say to those of you kind enough or curious enough to go and read my story is thank you so much for taking the time. Reading seems to me such an affirmative act. I always feel after I've read for even just a few minutes that I've struck a blow for humanity. So thank you, Sean, and thanks to all of you out there. That's all I have to say.
Thomas, I thank you for being here and for saying those words. And I was thinking while you were talking, like I think we all can laugh and agree that artists, especially writers, abhor cliches. You want to avoid them because they're cliches. But I want to reclaim a cliche to say that when you sent that piece in, the word that I cannot escape is haunting. It haunted me. And it continues to haunt me in all the right ways. It unnerved me and it made me think, it made me feel. And it was certainly a very appropriate thematic piece for the issue of power. And 1455 is very proud to feature that and have it really kind of be a centerpiece of this issue. So tremendous gratitude from us to you. Thanks
very much. And thank you for having me here. It's great.
Our pleasure, and hopefully this will not be the first and last time. So, and that goes to all of you. Once you're in the 1455 family, it's like the mafia. We want you never getting out. So we will see more of you. Continuing along again for me as the publisher. I have to the publisher as the gatekeeper for this movable type experiment. It just affords me the opportunity to encounter great works that I might not have otherwise encountered. So for me, right, that is a tremendous honor and privilege. So the next writer is Halal Isler, and I hope I'm saying your name right. I'll allow you to correct me, but this is a writer that I'm delighted to have been introduced to, and it was a no-brainer to include this work in this issue. So Halal, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you very much, Sean, for including the work, for including me. Thank you, Thomas. That was so affirming. I'm going to remember some of that. I'm going to watch and take notes. Something about a skull. I don't know. I just had my wisdom tooth out, so I'm like quite loopy. I had my wisdom tooth out and I watched 6 hours of The Godfather. So wow. This is all very resonant, as you do, Maybe I won't read the piece. Maybe I won't. It's called Honey. It's a piece that, although it's fiction, it's inspired by my own lived experience and my family, specifically my stepmother, whom I call Noni in the piece, and also in real life. Noni isn't actually a Turkish word. It's just one of the kids in our family called her that one day and it stuck. So the piece is about Noni and my father and the love they share and the life they lead in a tiny Turkish coastal town called Taşucu, which translates to tip of the rock or edge of the rock. It's on the Mediterranean, but it's not like sexy or anything. It's like a fishing town. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's in everybody's business. They have one farmer's market, lots of goats, that kind of thing. Noni's born and raised there. Since this issue of movable type is about power, I wanted to explore power in a few ways. I did it in 4. First, I was interested in complicating the ideas we have about power and relationship, specifically gender dynamics, gender roles, when we think about Muslim families, Muslim men and women in relationship, in particular, Turkish men and women. Second, I wanted to challenge the stereotypes we might have about older people and their sexuality, how they're typically portrayed as maybe sexless or celibate for some reason. Third, I tried to take that standard, somewhat linear narrative we've been given about climate refugees to hearken back to what Justin was kind of alluding to earlier, power, climate, somehow it fits in my head as well in that way. But we are given this narrative of this is what a climate refugee looks like, and this is where they start, and this is where they end up. So I was interested in twisting that line and maybe interrupting the straightness of it. And finally, 4, the ultimate power brokers. You called yourself a gatekeeper, which is like ding, ding, ding for me. Sean, you're not a gatekeeper. You're a cool one, okay? The ultimate power brokers, the gatekeepers of the American publishing industry. And I know a lot has been written about that, and there's a growing awareness about just how much needs to change. And typically, this is changing again, but gatekeepers tend to want to publish these market-tested, reductive kind of stories about folks from the Middle East and the Near East. And if you come with a story that doesn't fit that market-tested kind of mold, which is usually, let's be honest, anchored in trauma and trope, then they kind of don't know what to do with you. So I was drawn to explorations of these 4 expressions of power in this piece, all under 1,000 words. So it's called Honey and it's online, and I'm very grateful to Sean for giving it a platform. So I'm not going to read it,
Well, again, I think, for me, there's no downside. I do love you and Thomas both, like the tease and the lead up, but that's actually very special because for those that have not yet experienced the pieces, I envy having the opportunity to hear you both speak about them and then go experience them. So that I think really makes it deeper. And point well taken. When I say gatekeeper, I find myself thinking, as it relates to me, more like the Rick Moranis in Ghostbusters, like the idiot running around trying to figure out like what's going on. But yes, gatekeeping as it relates to the publishing industry and market trends. I think that's actually an issue that will be hopefully taking a much deeper dive into. Our next issue is on the theme of state of the art, both pun intended and literally, the notion of where are we circa 2022, what's changing, what hasn't changed, and what needs to be changed. And I think what you just said articulated so beautifully why we always need to be in dialogue and checking ourselves and broadening, the received wisdom that we're fed. So again, you enlarged my world, so I'm very grateful for you doing that.
All right, how generous of you to say that. Thank you, Sean. Thanks again for the opportunity.
And another epic backdrop. Thank you for that too.
Hey, this is my Zoom room. Okay.
Love it. Okay, another first-time writer for me that I'm so happy to have met and look forward to reading and hearing more from her. I'm happy to welcome Jane Palmer in. Jane, thank you for submitting and sharing your world with us. I'm delighted to let you speak about yourself and your work.
Sure, thank you. My name is Jane Palmer. By day, I'm a professor in a very non-creative field of like statistics and research methods and social policy. But I wrote a lot in high school and college and even after college. and took a really long hiatus because I was busy being a social worker and becoming a professor and stuff. And then of course the pandemic opened up lots of windows for creativity for me. I opened an Etsy shop and was selling like social justice masks for people to wear to Black Lives Matter protests. And I started writing again and remembered how much joy it brought me. And the main sort of lesson, one of the many that I got out of the pandemic was like, how do I want to spend my time? And so I've started to clear my plate of things that it's kind of like a Marie Kondo, kind of like what sparks joy, but around time and how I spend my time. And so I've started writing a lot more and applied for an MFA program that I started this semester. I have a dog that's trying to come in the room right now. I don't know if you can hear her.
We're dog friendly.
She wants to add something about it. And so thank you for welcoming this piece. When I saw the solicitation for the theme of power, it really piqued my interest. It really piqued my interest because of a lot of the work I do has to do with power. And this piece is really about the power of trauma, the power of healing, and the power that one can regain after trauma with time. So thank you for letting me read it today. I will read it. The piece is called Reclamation. How does it feel to walk down the street confident no one will harm you? To be in a crowded space and not scan for all possible exits? To let your guard down and invite love over to stay? Fight, flight, or freeze? Asks the therapist. I say I fight because the truth is more complicated, and I no longer want to be the me that freezes or flees. How's your sleep? Asks the doctor. Fine, I say. Because when I sleep, I dream of wild worlds where I fight dragons and win. I wake up unrested, but accomplished. I start my day ready to conquer any challenge, ready to invite you over to stay, without worrying about exits or dragons.
Thank you very much, Jane. And I will say, I think it was inevitable that this issue, was a little heavy. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a lot right about that. But I think for artsy types and intellectuals, we invariably go to the dark side. And again, especially with what's going on in the world, it kind of behooves us to give thought to the powerless and what power means in different settings. But we also need inspiration and solidarity. And I feel like your contribution was a very welcome and necessary reminder that we need to look out for ourselves and each other. It was just this blast of positive energy. So I'm doubly grateful, not only for you contributing, but the actual piece you contributed, and to hear you read it is really gratifying.
Thank you.
So thank you. Okay, so we have a little mini reunion, full circle of sorts. We started with Justin Aaron, who I first met because he was the mastermind behind the beloved Noepe Center at Martha's Vineyard, and the community that he built organically and deliberately and positively drew hundreds of amazing kindred spirits together. And one of them is Stephanie Ann Smith. So this is the first time that I think Justin, Stephanie, and I have been on the same screen ever. But certainly since the pandemic, we all haven't had an opportunity to kind of connect. So completely unintentional, and yet is anything coincidental? When you have a community that you're building, I think that the circles start to cross in a really great way. So it was inevitable, but also very awesome to have Stephanie send her piece in. Stephanie, please introduce yourself and do whatever you need to do. I know the piece is a little bit longer, but I don't know what you have in mind, but I welcome whatever it is.
Not sure if she's still here.
You know, she's been popping in and out. She's in Florida, and she had warned me that there might be losing power. So I didn't, of course, I'm looking at the screen like a good host, and I didn't notice that she wasn't, she's not
just
there, but hopefully she'll be able to pop back in. But I'll just say this, she sent a prose piece, a short story called Mighty with a capital T, and it couldn't have been more appropriate. And speaking of getting into the more heavy, but had humor, has a lot of wit and a lot of intelligence. And it's oddly, to me anyway, it's like it's a throwback in terms of craft, but it's very of the now. And in all the ways that Hillel talked about, not trying to be trendy, not trying to catch the wind of what's prevailing right now. It's just, it's embedded in what some of the concerns and how we look at the world and each other in 2022. So if she's not able to jump back in, I will once again say, go check out the issue and you can read her entire piece. So if she is able to jump back in, we'll certainly want to hear from her. I want to give a shout out to our other two who were not able to join tonight, Kathleen Helen and Angela Ferraro. Angela has participated in previous summer festivals, and so I've been able to enjoy her work. She sent me a piece, and I hesitate to call it a cartoon. I mean, I think it is technically a cartoon, but it's like a graphic novel in miniature. I'll say no more than that because if you haven't seen it yet, I don't even want to attempt to do it justice, but it's a piece that has stayed with me, and I've returned to it several times. And it does what the best art, I think, can do, which is unnerve you, frighten you, infuriate you, and in the end, inspire you. So I hope that serves as sufficient enthusiasm, but I really do encourage you to check that out and all of these pieces. So while we hope Stephanie can get back in, I see my boy John Madoff has joined. I'll be brief because I could talk about this guy for a while. It'll suffice to say that he has, for over a decade, which is aging both of us, but for well over a decade, has been one of my go-to favorite contemporary musicians. I came to him as a fan. We became friends. We have shared a stage together, which remains one of the highlights of my last decade. His music is just a part of my soul's soundtrack. But in addition to being an unbelievable musician and gatherer and builder of community, John is also a very outward-looking force for the arts. And we're going to have a conversation for the next issue about some of the other ways that he engages and helps other artists, which is very near and dear. But for this issue, I did solicit a piece, and it was the way it should be. I think it was a very organic. I basically went to him and said, can you please, in parentheses, I'm insisting, contribute something? And of course he stepped up and did what he does. For those of you that are about to discover John for the first time, I do envy you, but you've got a lot of catching up to do. John, I hope I haven't gone on too long, but I hope I'm also conveying both my appreciation and admiration. It's an honor whenever you deign to come hang out with me. So please tell a little bit about yourself, and I hope you're going to play a little something for us.
Yeah. I didn't know about if it should be like from the video, or if I guess I could play something now, but I don't know how it's going to sound with the computer. I don't know. We'll see. Or I could just talk about it because I like.
Do what you got to do. And again, like I said, certainly not to put you on the spot. The piece is in the issue. It's embedded. The video is there, and then that will be a gateway to further Madoffian adventures. Yeah.
Well, thank you. First of all, I don't know if I live up to that intro, but I appreciate it. And it's great to be here. And when I came on, I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to go on with Sean Murphy and it's going to be a bunch of writers. I'm not going to know what to say because it's like, I don't live in, I read, but I don't feel that I have any real command of language as an individual, beyond emails and, talking to my kids. So as far as that, I don't know what to say. It's an honor to be here. I'm happy to talk about, the work that I do or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, maybe it was what Thomas was saying before about clearing the head and kind of like what's there, what emerges there. That definitely resonated a lot with me. And I remember maybe you and I have talked about this, Sean, but I heard years and years ago, I don't even remember who it was, but I heard a writer say that, I mean, this is going back like 25 years. I heard a writer say that when they're in the zone of writing, they're taking dictation from something else. It's not deliberate. It's not personal. I mean, it is personal in a deeper sense, even than like your awareness of yourself. It's just like coming from someplace else. So that's always kind of what I'm aiming for, which is funny because you can't really aim for it. You have to just like let go of all that stuff, and that's what comes out. So I guess if I could say what my journey as a musician is, it's trying to do that as much as possible and not judge it myself. Because I'm sure, I'm not alone as an artist in being my own harshest critic. And not even critic like this, you make something and you're like, wow, I'm done. This is awful. It goes beyond being bad work to like some condemnation of like your whole self. But I've gotten that under control a little bit. So just about me, I play guitar. Well, you can see some of my instruments in the background. I play guitar and I write music and I run a record label. And I also more recently have started like consulting and teaching musicians on the music business, especially all of the upheavals, which I think is very similar to the publishing world, also the film world, like these upheavals in the industry where all of the revenue models have flipped and everything is different, whether some good, some bad, some very good, some very bad, in my opinion, and trying to deal with that reality for myself, for the ensembles that I lead, for my record label, and then trying to help the community that I'm a part of navigate that. And just stop. You already know, Sean, that when I start talking, like, I don't know when to stop. So you just be like, oh, that was great. Okay, next. So I moved to New York about 20 years ago. And I started pretty soon after to work with a musician, a composer, also a label head named John Zorn, who is kind of very rooted in the New York scene and he's kind of at the helm of this scene, it was a very attractive scene for me because it was these musicians who would like take from everything, contemporary classical to, West African music, to Japanese noisecore, to, Brazilian music, everything and anything, to things that are not music, like sound design and, blowing a bird call into a cup of water, like it's just sound. And that was the world that I like somehow felt that I needed to be a part of, and was lucky to have been like kind of accepted into that world. And through my own bands that I've run and through work with other people, a lot of that in my case, because of my own background, is related to Jewish music, but that's kind of, it's never where I felt comfortable to be rooted in that one place. But part of Zorn's world is that, and I connect with him and resonate with him there, but it's also like very much only a starting place, which to me is a metaphor for like being a human being in the world, that like to have your own rooted identity, but to have that not be a barrier to connect with other people, but a bridge to connect with other people through art and otherwise. So I had a trio for many years that I think is when we originally met. I don't think I had Zion 80 yet, right? So I had a trio that was like doing Jewish music, but also influenced by like Jimi Hendrix and the jazz music that I was into. And then after that expanded to a large ensemble of 10 people that was doing a mixture of Jewish music and Afrobeat music, most primarily inspired by Fela Kuti, who was kind of like the inventor of Afrobeat music, who's a world unto himself. But and more recently, partly pandemic related, I have been here in my basement making music that is something like electronic music, I don't know what to call it, but going in a very different direction, like kind of answering the question of like, what can I do by myself? You know, what can I do that doesn't involve a ginormous group of people in a studio and, you know, a budget and things like that. So that's a little bit, I don't want to like, you know, monopolize too much time, but
I think that's a perfect, I mean, that's a perfect teaser for the wide world of Madoff. And you know, I'll add, I think what, you know, you really just articulated what one of the things that I really admire about your aesthetic, which is it is this all-encompassing, you know, take no prisoners, but with a purpose. I think the artists that are able to reflect those deep passions, you know, it's a function of loving the world and being engaged in the world, and that comes through in the art. So when I listen to your music, you know, I'm never in one place. I'm usually in a lot of places and a lot of times.
thank you.
And I like getting lost in that world. So I think that's a perfect teaser for the music that you provided for this issue. But I also, again, encourage everyone checking this out to check John out. You will be richly rewarded.
Thank you.
The music that he's made. So I appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
you and I will be talking again about the state of the art, and we'll
Yes.
definitely go deeper into you know, your perspective on the shifting, you know, music scene and how that interacts with the broader kind of both cultural and commercial machinations of the world in 2022.
Right.
So listen, I mean, you know, I'm very disappointed that Stephanie got bounced out, but you know, I think we call that a force majeure. Perhaps her piece, which is longer, requires sustained engagement and reading in one sitting. So I ask everyone that was here tonight watching to check that out and share it. I ask everyone that's checking this out to spread the word and share this amazing work. Again, the loosely held word gatekeeper, I'm the cheerleader to help provide the space for this amazing work. So absolutely my pleasure to be here tonight as the MC. I'm deeply grateful to each and every one of you for sharing your time and your work. And I warmly invite all of you to stay engaged with 1455 because we certainly are really honored to share your work. So we are right at 8 o'clock, best laid plans. Everyone be safe, be well, and be in touch. And again, for those of you checking us out tonight, hopefully we see you again. And I ask all of you to be safe and take care of one another. So good night for now, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Sean.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.